and welcome to our video with Global Wealth Strategies and Associates. I'm Mike Silva, a financial planner and coach, and today I have the pleasure of talking with Adam Way, a certified financial planning professional and all-around money guru. Adam, welcome. How you doing this morning?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, as usual, I got some awesome planning questions for you. And I think today what's on the brain is I just wanted to talk about and have a conversation around budget. As a financial planner, what are your thoughts around what make a good budget?
That's a great question, and one that really is multi-part. I think a good budget is one where it includes a person's burn rate, but also it is one where people can actively track what they're spending money on, report back, and kind of look in review as to what they were doing. So two words that we use a lot at GWS&A are burn rate and cash flow analysis. A little bit different than a budget because with the clientele that we work with, they really want to have a great idea of where their money is going, but they also don't want to be told, hey, I can't buy, this quality of steak at the grocery store, or, I can't get that cup of coffee on vacation because I magically hit the number already of what I was budgeting for. So I want to really delineate between cash flow analysis, burn rate, and budgeting from a nomenclature perspective. So let's start with burn rate, if that works for you.
Yeah, I'd love to know more insight on that.
Perfect. So burn rate is how much money you burn through in a standard month. So if I were to use my wife, Barb, and myself, we have a mortgage, we have utilities, we do date nights on Tuesday nights, sports league on Wednesday nights, and we occasionally like to drink nice bottles of Italian red wine. So our burn rate is all of that combined, not just the necessities, but really a stereotypical quote unquote normal month. So obviously this is not a COVID month where we stayed at home and did nothing for a few weeks. This is not a month where we've traveled internationally and spent $1 bazillion on airfare. It's just a run-of-the-mill month. So burn rate is used by financial planners and is a really critical number for us to know because we're calculating your 6-month emergency fund on 6x what your burn rate is. And the idea is then if you ever had an emergency, you would never have to adjust your lifestyle for upwards of 6 months if you ever lost a job or had a transition or something along those lines. So let me pause there. I guess any questions on what I mean by burn rate, Mike?
That seems like it might take a little bit of time to do. Do you have any advice on rounding up? Should it be a little higher or lower? It's kind of like a Goldilocks number where it might never be perfect, but we just want to get the right idea, right?
Yep. I say to avoid analysis paralysis, I would say get the very best number that you can get and spend no more than 30 minutes, ideally 15 minutes, just getting the bigger ticket items and round up and guess just a smidge too high. Because the reality is if we're having just a skosh too much in an emergency fund, better be a tad high than a tad low. So great question on that. And one exercise that you can do that leads nicely into calculating burn rate is to do a cash flow analysis. So almost every good financial planner on the face of the planet is probably going to have some sort of worksheet, Excel workbook, or similar, where they can measure cash flow. And they're going to break it into sections: housing, transportation, entertainment, savings, et cetera, et cetera. And they're going to have categories to quote unquote prime the pump for their clients. So they're going to say, hey, what is your cell phone bill? That way you're not trying to think of all the categories of things that people spend money on. And that is a super duper helpful exercise. And whenever you do a cash flow analysis, one of the common questions I get asked is, I'm going to use a water bill, for example. Might be really high in the summer when people are watering a lot and really low in the winter. So let's use some fake numbers. Let's say in the winter it's $50 and in the summer it's $100. And they're like, oh gosh, what do I put in my cash flow analysis? The numbers somehow change throughout the year. I would say throw it in the cash flow analysis at 75, kind of like split it right down the center. because all we're really trying to do is get a monthly average throughout the year. And that's a great place to start.
I
Any,
love it.
yeah, any questions on cash flow analysis or how we go around about that?
No, and in my brain, I'm thinking that's a little bit more unique than many budgets I've seen before, and that we're thinking through, burn rate and emergency savings on an average monthly basis.
Yeah.
Um, what other term did we have? We had burn rate, cash flow analysis. Was there another one that you had
And
mentioned?
I believe the other one that we were after was really talking about kind of a savings amount or a
Uh,
target on that so that we could back in to how we build the overall structure.
yes.
So here's a great general rule of thumb. And this is general, and every situation is unique or different. But I think this is a great starting point when you have literally no idea how much money you should save. I think you should pick the number 30%. And it's 30% of gross, not net. That I find that if people are saving 30% of gross, you can really, quite frankly, screw up a bunch of things and still have a successful retirement because you're saving the right amount of money.
Love
Now,
it.
could that number be less? Probably, but 30% is a good, just kind of lick your fingers, stick it in the wind type number. And let's use a fake example. So let's say somebody that makes 100 grand a year, our goal is for them to save around $2,500 a month. A good way of thinking about it is financial planners should be either the most expensive person in your life or second to your mortgage. I mean, it's going to be up there.
Right.
Retirement is freaking expensive,
Mm-hmm.
and it is one where you have to save quite a bit of input so that you can have enough output in retirement years. So when we're figuring out that 30%, let's use a fake example where you put 5% in your 401k and you have an employer match of 4.
Sure.
You're already at 9. We have 21%
Yeah.
to go. So
Okay.
when you start chipping away at it, it's kind of interesting because you can get there a little bit faster than what I think people expect. And that makes it a little bit easier.
In your example of 30% getting you to retirement, is this what would you define loosely as retirement as people are thinking through this?
Yeah, great question. I would say the vast majority of the folks that we work with basically phase into retirement. So they effectively terminate their employment with that high stress, work 55 to 60 hours a week. And then one of my clients jokingly calls it he pretends to work and they pretend to pay job. Which makes me laugh, but effectively it's going from that work all the time around the clock and kind of phase into something new, something different. It's pretty rare with my clientele that they just do nothing. My self-employed business owners will do some consulting, project-based stuff, but they're not doing kind of the daily grind. The employees that I work with will typically take, again, a consulting role or maybe just a hobby job. I had one last week where I actually worked with a person for quite a bit of time, and he's like, I'm going from a high stress job in the criminal justice space, and he's actually a florist 3 days a week now. Would have never guessed. And he's like, yeah, it's amazing. They paid me for this. It's totally stress free. So it's that type of transition.
Um, I love it. And, what a helpful conversation to have around a budget, getting awareness with cash flow and your burn rate, helping you build an emergency savings account of 6 months. Um, then thinking through a savings amount to have, just a licking your finger and sticking it in the wind guess to achieve a healthy retirement. Um, anything I'm missing in summing up conversation today around budget?
I think the end game, I think it's really good to kind of talk about that mindset. If we can go from unconscious consumers to where, if you have this much money left over after you're paying mortgage, utilities, etc., people will be unconscious consumers and they'll spend whatever that amount is. Generally, they won't go over with the folks that we work with. It's just all of those dollars go somewhere because they're obviously not going to savings. And they're just unconsciously buying stuff that, quite frankly, many times they don't need or really use or spend much time researching getting. So if we can be unconscious savers, that's the end game where we can just kind of set it and forget it, automate it, have money come out of their account per month or possibly out of paychecks to where the net amount that they receive is money they can
Mhm.
spend, but they know that they're saving the right amount for retirement. And there's a lot of relief and personal empowerment and removal of guilt, quite frankly, when you're saving that correct amount of money and you go to buy something that you really have been wanting for a while and researched and are going to use a ton, you're buying it stress-free. You're not buying it with the mindset of, oh man, now I'm going to have to work till 68 instead of 60. You're feeling good about your purchase.
Yeah, it seems like something that works very well and lowers and reduces stress to think about the things you do care about in life, like living, spending time with friends and family, or pursuing your hobbies.
Yep. And my thoughts are is I know there's a lot of fee only or fee-based financial planners that charge 3,000 to 5,000 to do a retirement plan. My thoughts are is if you're not saving at least 20%, I
Mm,
really struggle recommending that somebody spend 3 to 5 grand to find out they're not saving enough. It just doesn't seem like a great spend. And I know looking in fancy software programs and modeling things out is like the cool new thing that people want to talk about. And lots of bells and whistles, and they want to see how low they can get that savings number down if they change a bazillion variables. But my thoughts are is focus on what really matters. Focus on the input of what you have control over, which is how much money you can save. And arguably, I'd say if you're in that 20 to 30% range, you're a good person to do a retirement plan for. But if you're only saving 9%, for example, you have no business spending $3,000 or $5,000 to analyze that you're not saving enough. I can tell you're not saving enough.
Another useful tip. Well, Adam, really appreciate it as always chatting with you and catching up with planning advice, tips, and strategies. We'll look forward to catching up with you again on another conversation. Have a great day. Take care
All
from
right.
Global Wealth Strategies and Associates.
You as well. Thank you.